Hello and welcome everyone to the RDP Best Practices webinar. My name is Brandon Cook. I'm going to be doing just a really quick intro for Windi today before we get started. So first off, just got a few quick housekeeping notes. So as you can see, we are using GoToWebinar today. If you look to the right of your screen, you'll see the questions tab. Feel free to drop any questions that you have in there as we're going here, and we'll make sure to get to those at the end of today's webinar. Just a heads up as well, today's is going to be a 30-minute webinar, so it's going to be a little quicker today. So more times for Q&A at the end, so if you get some questions, go ahead and throw them in there. Also, feel free to check out our resources page on Njevity.com to check out some of our upcoming webinars we got going, as well as all of our webinar recordings. And we got a few videos going up this week. I think 3 of them going up today. So check those out. Got some good stuff on there. All right, let's take a look at today's agenda. It's, again, a shorter one today. So we'll do our mission statement real quick in an intro, and then we'll go right into the best practices and do a little Q&A. All right, and our mission in Njevity is really important to us. That's the foundation of everything we do. Our mission is to improve the life and success of our partners and customers by providing exceptional business application experiences that simplify, inform, and delight. And today's presenter, of course, is Windi Epperson. I know a lot of you guys probably know Windi. She's our support manager here. A lot of you guys probably interacted with her over the years. She joined us back last summer, and I'll turn it over to her right now.
Welcome to our webinar today. So my slide deck obviously is very short, but as more and more people are working from home, we wanted to go ahead and touch base on some of the things that will really help to streamline and, according with our mission statement, simplify your use of remote desktop. So we're going to talk about the remote desktop connection itself. We're going to take a look at kind of the guts behind the remote desktop setup. We're going to look at some sizing options, some printer discussions, a little bit of information about using Internet Excel, and then of course disconnecting and logging off properly. So with that, I'm going to maybe drag this over here so you guys can see it. So when you connect to a remote desktop, you will have a remote desktop icon available to you. If it is one that we have sent you, then you probably do not want to get in where I'm getting ready to get in, because we have a bunch of settings. When we send you your remote desktop icon, we have settings saved in there that are the ones that you need to enhance your RDP experience. So you probably don't want to change them much, but I just want to show you what they are. So if something's not quite working with my RDP the way I want to, I can actually right click on that and choose edit. And within that window, we have a couple of different options. So here is where it saves your username. If by chance you're having login issues with your RDP, if you email us at support@njevity.com, we have a document that'll walk you through coming in and clearing out. Sometimes remote desktop will remember your credentials, and in remembering your credentials, it can actually get them confused, especially if you have a Power GP Online login versus your normal Office 365 login. Microsoft tends to not be able to know who you are and can get it confused. So we may have to come in and clear those remembered credentials out and tell the system not to remember them, to let it refresh and look at new credentials. But again, if you have that issue, email support@njevity.com, and we have a document we'll send you that tells you, walks you through the steps to clear this out. But just so you know, this is where it's saving your name and where you've made the choice of whether to allow it to save your credentials or not. The display tab is the one where I really want to spend some time. And the biggest piece here is this small versus large. If I take this down to small, and then I go ahead and open this remote desktop, I'm going to open it here in a minute. I'll open it now. And you'll be able to see, it's on my other window. I'm logging in real quick. Actually, I think I opened the wrong one. When I open this one, it won't open quite as big as I want it to. It will only go so far because I've told it to open in small mode. If I change that, get out of here, and I change my settings, oh, well, of course it opened in full mode because I hadn't actually saved my settings. I would need to save these settings in order for it to open small mode. So I'll come back in a minute and open the one that I was going to show you this. But if it opens in small and you prefer that it opens larger, then you can open anywhere up to, the largest is full screen. And so I'll kind of show you how that acts here in a minute. And the other choice in this window that's important is down here, the display connection bar when I use full screen. And I'll show you what that means. It actually puts a little bar at the top, which gives you some control options. And I'll show you that. Local resources, again, if we send you your remote connectivity, then everything that you need checked in here is checked. But if you're having trouble seeing your printers, you might want to come and check and make sure this box is checked, because if this box is unchecked, your remote desktop session will not see your local printers. It's not going to be able to see them there. You're not going to be able to print to them. It's not going to be able to find them. The clipboard functionality, if I need to do a copy within my remote desktop and paste it to somewhere local, if I don't have this turned on, that won't let me do it. The copy and paste will only be available within the remote desktop, not between the remote desktop and my local machine. Under More, the most important piece under here is these extra drives. So in this case, right now, if in my remote desktop, if I open this, it will be able to see my local C drive, and it will be able to see any drives that I plug in later. We have some customers who use a check printing software where they actually have a signature on a USB drive. If this box is not checked, when they plug in that USB drive, that signature is not going to be seen. So you want to make sure that your settings are where you want them to be. And then lastly, experience, generally this is set in optimum settings anyhow, so you really don't mess with this tab. But under advanced, there's also the ability to go in and do some more clearing out of the credentials, and these are in those steps. So again, if your user is stuck, let us know. We'll send you the steps and tell you which of these pieces to clear out. Okay, so just to kind of show you this a little bit, let me go back over here, and I'm going to open this little guy, and he's going to be kind of slow to open. So we're going to wait on him for a minute. I will open another one as we wait on this one. So we'll multitask. I'm going to open that one, and I'm going to open this one. This is the one that I was looking at to edit here just a minute ago. Putting passwords. Okay, so the first one that I opened up, see how tiny that little window opened? And if I stretch it, it only stretches that big. So this is the PGP WS GP1. If I look at the properties on this one, you'll notice the properties for this one are set to be small. So that's as big as I can get that one to be. If I drag it over here somewhere and go back on my main and I save that, now let me close out of it. And I open it back up. See how many times I can type my password today. We have multi-factor authentication turned on, so it's buzzing me on my phone to prompt me for the extra approval levels. Okay, so now when I open this, because I went large, it stretches much bigger. So you can see by default, it's still opening kind of small, but now I can actually get a lot of landscape going on here because I told it I wanted it to be large. Okay, let me get the other window open. When the other one opens, let me grab him, bring it over here. Okay, so this one opens, and when it is full screen, you'll notice this is that toolbar that I have turned on. So when it's open in full screen, but what a lot of people don't realize is I can move this. So if I open GP and my GP menu goes way up here at the top and I can't get to it, I can actually drag this guy and get him out of the way. There's some other benefits of this window too, so I'm going to minimize that down a little bit. And I'm going to show you this fabulous feature that you guys are going to be very happy you signed up for this webinar for. Let me open Excel. And I'll just open anything, doesn't matter what it is. Okay, you have an option up here on your bar to do some sizing. So I can actually zoom this and zoom it down to 50%, and you see it shrunk my window. It also shrunk the contents. If I want to increase it up to say 150%, same thing. giganto. I also have the ability to make it go back to normal size. And with it being normal size, I have the ability to do smart sizing. And what smart sizing does is it changes based on what you're doing. So if I'm going to drag this window to another monitor and the other monitor is not as big as this one, then all of the contents within that smart size. So they hold their ratio of sizing as I move it around. So that's quite beneficial. Again, if I can't see what I'm doing in my window, I can either zoom it or smart size it. Okay. Let me see what's next on my talking point. Okay, printer logic. So within a given, we saw in the remote desktop settings where you can tell it to use your local printers. When I do this, printers, I don't think I spelled printers right. Let's see if I can actually type properly. There we go. You'll notice in here, I don't have any local printers. So when I made this connection, I did not have that option turned on. Let's look at the other one I have open and see if I had that one enabled on there. I've got to get this guy smart size so I can use him. No, I don't have any printers installed on this one. Okay, so we'll disconnect and take a look again here in a minute. We'll make sure that this is set up. If I did have printers showing, which we'll see here in a minute, they would all say redirected on them. So there may be overlap. If I have a Microsoft XPS document writer installed on my local machine, then I will get some overlap there. And I'll be able to see both of them. Don't save, cancel. Let me log back into this one again and make sure that we're sharing printers. I'm just going to edit that, make sure that my local resources are shared, my printers are shared. So that should have worked. Of course, it's demo world, so see if it works on round 2. If not, I'll open another one. However, with it not working, that's actually a good extra piece of information. One of the things with printers that you need to consider is as you are loading, so let me show you my task manager as well. As I am loading, a lot of extra stuff is loading in here. So this is opening stuff and running stuff behind the scenes. And you'll notice if I leave this for very long, this is number 15, so now it's down to 12. So as it loads stuff, it drops off of the list. But this is just what it takes for this remote desktop to work, okay? If I jump into remote desktop and immediately open Great Plains, but it hasn't loaded my printers, Great Plains can't see those printers. So it can't print to them because it doesn't know they're there. You may, and we get this call fairly regularly, where someone will say, I can see all of my printers in my printer and device window, but I can't see any of them in Great Plains. It's just a timing. Your remote desktop was not fully loaded. It didn't have time to pull in all those printers, so now GP can't see those printers, okay? So with printers, my tip is make sure that you give it time to load, and realize that anything that is your local printer will say redirected beside it so that you know which one you're printing to. And then the third tip for printers is if you print directly from within the remote desktop to a local printer, realize that that is going through a whole lot of tunnels. So your local machine is connecting to our remote desktop in our server center in Colorado, and now you're telling it to come out of that remote desktop back through the internet to your local printer. So that can take a really long time to do. If you are running a gigantic historical age trial balance report, you may not want to run it to printer. You may want to print it to PDF and then copy it, move it down to your local drive and print it from there. But printing direct to printer is really a lengthy process that can hog a lot of resources. So if you don't have to, if you need to do it for printing checks or something critical, then go ahead and do it. But if you don't have to print to a local printer, you will save yourself a lot of headache and a lot of time constraints if you don't do that. In addition, if I print a historical trial balance or any report within GP, if I don't print it to screen and I do choose to print it only to printer, if GP can't make the connection with that printer, then your job is going to stick in the process monitor for GP and it's not going to finish. GP can't find the printer to print to it, so it can't ever finish the job, which is then going to hang every other job you queue up after that. So again, printing to local printers, do that sparingly. Do it only as needed. All right, let me see what's my next topic. So internet and Excel. With the internet, the general rule of thumb is don't open the internet in your remote desktop unless you need to, unless it's something that is related to what you are doing. If I'm getting ready to create an ACH file for accounts payable and I need to upload that to the bank, open the internet and upload that to the bank. If I am going to watch a training video, don't do that in your remote desktop window. It will affect performance for you and for everyone else in your system. You are taking away bandwidth and internet resources from everyone at that point in time. If you're streaming music, do not do that within your remote desktop window. Everything that you do in the internet should be done on your local machine, way down here at the bottom on your local machine, not in your remote desktop window. We have a lot of customers who will call in and say, my performance is horrible. And the first thing I do is log in, I look at Task Manager, and I will see somebody, one particular person is eating up a big chunk of memory. And 9 times out of 10, when I open the session for that person, they have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 20 internet windows open. And they're just consuming bandwidth for themselves and for everyone else in their company. So using internet within your system should be done extremely sparingly. Now, the other thing I will say within the internet, and you guys can't see that on the window I'm looking at, my machine is, my workstation that I'm using now is hard cabled, which means I have a LAN cable plugged directly into my laptop docking station. If I have Wi-Fi on my laptop, the best practice is to make sure that my Wi-Fi gets disabled when I have my laptop plugged into my docking station. And the reason for that is if my Wi-Fi is enabled and it is set up to know the credentials for my, say, office or home Wi-Fi, and I have a hard cable at the same time, the hard cable doesn't necessarily trump the Wi-Fi. So both devices, the cable and the Wi-Fi, are both trying to connect to the internet. And when they're doing that, they're fighting for that connection. So if I am connected into this remote desktop window, I logged in this morning, I had my Wi-Fi turned on, I'm connected to this internet, and then I plugged my laptop into my docking station. Now I have a cabled connection. So see right down here, this little icon? This little icon tells me that I've got a cabled connection. That's what that's telling me. If it were Wi-Fi, I would have, you know, your standard Wi-Fi symbol of how many bars do we have. But if my machine suddenly decides to go try and check the Wi-Fi, I'll lose this connection. This connection will drop. My cabled connection will drop. And when I make that Wi-Fi connection, it may not join me back to this window. I may have to get out and get back in, or I may get a message that says, hey, your remote desktop has been connected. You're going to have to get back in. So if you're having connectivity issues between your local workstation and even getting in your remote desktop, the first troubleshooting tip is to make sure that your Wi-Fi is disabled if you are connected to a docking station that's using a hardwired cable. The second thing that you can do is you can do a speed test. So if you go out to speedtest.net, and I will choose, I know that with my OEC, which is Oklahoma City Fiber, the best server for me to ping against is this OneNet. That's what my service provider has told me, that OneNet's the best one. When I hit go and test this, you guys are going to see I am on a hard cabled wire that's got 1 gigabit of fiber. So my up and download speeds are phenomenal. But if I run this test from, let's say, outside of my primary office and in my living room, these speeds go down dramatically because I'm on a Wi-Fi. And then there are spots in my house where these speeds are down in the 10 zone. I've got a 10 megabit upload and a 20 megabit download, and that's just not enough bandwidth capacity for you to get a good solid connection with your remote desktop. You're going to drop connection if you're that low. So I have screaming fast internet. But this is a really good place. If you guys are having trouble and you're getting the error message that your remote connectivity has been lost, you have been disconnected, your remote session has been disconnected, come out and run a speed test and see. And if you are down in the 10s and 20s, your problem is that your Wi-Fi signal is just not strong enough, and you need to go figure out where your router or your modem is and find out what's going on with that. Okay, in that same train of thought is Excel. So the same thing with Excel. Anytime I open Excel, I am eating up bandwidth. I am taking up memory. I am taking up CPU. Let's just open it just so we can watch how that happens while I'm talking. If you need to open Excel, see, now I'm up to 10. I was at 0 CPU and then I pumped up to 10 really quickly. So imagine that if there's 30 users in my system and everybody has 4 different Excel sheets open. You can see how quickly that's going to take memory and CPU usage across the board for everybody. So the same rule of thumb for Excel, Word, your other modules, I mean, even Power BI to an extent, if you can open them on your local desktop, please do. If you can't open them on your local desktop, if it is something that you can only do in the remote desktop, then go ahead. But if it's something, if you're at the office and you've got a gigantic Excel spreadsheet that's saved on your office server somewhere, open that on your local machine. Don't open that in the remote desktop. I had another train of thought on that. Oh yeah, and when you get ready to save this, if I try and save this down to my local C drive, that is going to really take a lot of effort as well, because again, I'm going through the internet to the remote window and then back to my local C drive, and that's just a really lengthy, time-consuming process. So if you're going to use Excel on your remote desktop, you should save it to your remote desktop. And you guys all have a shared data folder where you can save things to, but then you can copy and paste it locally if you need to. But the more I open, and if I open a file that's on my that's on my local machine, and I open that file within the remote desktop, that is a huge bandwidth suck. It's just going to take all of your memory and all of your CPU usage to try and open those. So again, if it's something that I need to do, if I am in GP and I'm exporting data from SmartList to Excel, by all means do that in here. If I am trying to build a file in Excel to import, by all means do that in your remote desktop. If I'm going to open a 30,000 line financial statement budgeting spreadsheet that's not really something I need in GP, then do that on your local machine, not on your desktop. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. Now for the critical piece, the disconnecting piece. So you will notice when I look at my task manager out here that I have Kuldeep is actually signed in but disconnected. So Kuldeep, out of my memory usage here, I'm using 78 meg of RAM. Kuldeep's using 2 gig. So he's not even connected. He has logged in at some point in time. And this is where the definition of there is a difference between disconnected and logged off. So if I go up here and just X out of my remote desktop, I am disconnected, but I am not logged off. And when I do that, it'll actually give me a message that says, hey, you're not logging off. Everything that you have open is going to stay open. And that should be your cue. No, I don't want to do that. I'm eating up bandwidth. Kuldeep's not in here, and he's taken a gigantic piece of my memory from me because he left it disconnected. So the absolute best practice is to make sure that when you are leaving for the day, you close all of your programs. You need to close out of GP. You need to close out of Excel. You need to make sure all of your internet browsers are closed out of too. You want to be at a nice, beautiful blank screen when you get ready to leave for the day. And from a GP standpoint, that also helps ensure you're getting good backups. Every night the backups run, they will back up all your files, but if users are in those files, they're not a nice, clean, pristine backup. There's still potential that there was a table open or a record open or something else going on. So just to make sure you've got really clean, pristine backups, everyone should be getting out of GP at night. Now that said, if I'm running a checklinks that I know is going to run for 8 hours and I need to run it overnight, I could X out and leave that open and come back. But that should be the exception to the rule, not the norm. So when you get done closing everything and you're ready to get out, if you are an Njevity Power GP Online customer, you probably have this log out button, and you can just click that button. It'll log you off of it'll close out all of your programs and log you out of the system properly. If you don't have that button and you are one of our customers, we can add that for you. But normally what you would do is come down here and you'll get one of two windows. So when I get ready to close out, with this version of Windows, I get my home screen, and from there I can click on my name and I can sign out. From the other remote desktop, looks a little different. When I click on those 4 squares, I get kind of a start menu. But if I right click on this tiny little icon down here is a human icon, a picture of a person. If I right mouse click on that, then I can sign out of that remote desktop, and I'm signing out properly. It releases the memory. In addition, for the whole disconnecting conversation, if I just continue Xing out instead of logging off, the longer I stay that way, the more bandwidth it accumulates. So it's not just that I'm using, an extra 10 gig of RAM today. Tomorrow that 10 gig becomes 12 gig, and the next day it becomes 14 gig, and within about 2 days of not logging off, you will see a performance issue yourself. Within about 4 days of not logging off, everyone in your company starts to see that performance issue. So when people are walking around grumbling because the software is slow, it's actually because they're not disconnecting. 9 times out of 10, when someone calls in and says, hey, our system is running really slowly, I will go look at their connections and I will see that there have been people logged in for 2, 3, 4 months and they've never logged out. They just keep Xing out. So it's self-inflicted pain. You guys do not have to suffer that pain if you will just log out of your system properly. Okay, with that, I talked a little bit longer than I intended to, but let's open it up for questions for the last couple of minutes. Brandon, any questions?
Not at the moment.
No, very succinct. Then I did meet my 30-minute time frame. Okay, well, with that, we will wrap it up. If you guys have any questions about any of this, feel free to email either me or support@njevity.com, and my email is wepperson@njevity.com. So we will close it out here, and everyone have a fabulous weekend.